The house stood at the corner of a quiet street, old but warm, the kind of place where memories clung to the walls. Inside lived Ayan, a reserved man in his mid-30s, and his dog, Shadow, a sharp-eyed mixed breed with a black patch over one eye. Shadow wasn't just a pet, he was Ayan's constant companion, his routine, his silence, and his protection. Next door lived Miriam, a single mother, and her 6-year-old daughter, Inaya. Inaya was curious, fearless, and endlessly talkative, everything Ayan was not. The first time Inaya saw Shadow, she stopped in her tracks, eyes wide with excitement. Instead of barking, Shadow sat calmly, tilting his head as if studying her. From that day on, an unusual bond formed. Every afternoon, Inaya would come running out with a small red ball, calling Shadow's name before even knocking. Shadow would wait for her by the gate, tail wagging, ears alert. Ayan watched from a distance at first, cautious but quietly amused. Shadow had never warmed up to strangers so easily. Inaya talked to Shadow as if he understood every word, about school, about birds on the wires, about dreams she couldn't fully explain. Shadow listened, sitting close, sometimes resting his head on her knees. Ayan noticed something strange. Shadow became more alert after meeting Inaya, more watchful of the street, more aware. One evening, Miriam thanked Ayan for letting Inaya spend time there. She mentioned feeling uneasy lately, strange cars passing by, unfamiliar faces lingering too long. Ayan brushed it off, but Shadow didn't. That night, Shadow barked at shadows outside the window long after the lights were off. Days passed and the friendship deepened. Inaya started bringing biscuits for Shadow, secretly slipping him extra pieces. Shadow, in return, followed her everywhere, even refusing food until she arrived. Then, one afternoon, something felt wrong. Inaya didn't come. Shadow waited by the gate. Minutes passed, then an hour. Ayan felt a strange tightness in his chest as Shadow began pacing, whining softly. Across the street, Miriam's door was open, but the house was silent. Ayan walked over and called out. No answer. Inside, toys were scattered across the floor. Inaya's red ball lay near the door, untouched. Miriam stood frozen in the kitchen, her phone shaking in her hand, eyes filled with terror. Inaya is missing, she whispered. Shadow suddenly growled low, his body stiff, nose pressed to the ground near the red ball. He picked up a scent and pulled hard against his leash toward the street, toward a direction Ayan had never seen him choose before. Ayan realized this wasn't just a disappearance. This was the beginning of something far more dangerous. As Shadow dragged Ayan forward, a black van slowly turned the corner at the end of the street, and Shadow began barking uncontrollably. Ayan barely had time to grab Shadow's leash before the dog lunged forward, claws scraping against the pavement. The black van at the corner paused for a second, just long enough for Shadow to lock his gaze on it, then disappeared down the road. Shadow's barking echoed through the empty street, sharp and urgent, nothing like before. Miriam collapsed onto the steps, her voice trembling as she explained. Inaya had been playing in the small park behind the houses. She'd only gone inside for 5 minutes. When she returned, the park was empty. No screams, no witnesses. Just silence. Ayan felt anger and guilt rise together. He blamed himself for ignoring Miriam's earlier warning. Shadow, however, was focused. His nose hovered close to the ground, tracing an invisible line from the red ball toward the park gate. Without waiting for police instructions, Ayan followed Shadow. The park was quiet, the swing swaying slightly as if someone had rushed past them not long ago. Shadow stopped near a broken fence at the far end. He sniffed deeply, then let out a low whine. "There," Ayan whispered. "You sure?" Shadow pulled again, this time toward the old service road behind the park, a place rarely used since a factory shut down years ago. Tire marks were visible in the dust, fresh and uneven. Shadow sniffed the ground, then the air, then suddenly sprinted forward. They ran. The road led to abandoned warehouses, their metal doors rusted and half open. Ayan slowed, fear creeping in. This wasn't a place to walk into blindly. He called the police, explaining everything in broken sentences. They promised help, but help felt far away. Shadow stopped abruptly near one warehouse, ears stiff. A faint sound drifted through the air, metal clanging, maybe a door shutting. Shadow growled, his body low, muscles tense. Ayan tied Shadow to a broken pole, whispering for him to stay. But Shadow refused, pulling free with a force Ayan had never seen before. He charged inside the warehouse, barking loudly. Ayan followed. Inside, shadows danced between broken crates. Suddenly, a man ran toward the back exit. Shadow chased him, barking wildly. The man tripped, dropping something, a small pink shoe. Anaya's shoe. The man escaped, but Shadow returned, carrying the shoe gently in his mouth, eyes wide with urgency. Ayan's hands shook as he picked it up. This wasn't random. This was planned. Police sirens wailed in the distance. An officer examined the shoe and confirmed something worse. This group had moved locations before. Fast, organized, dangerous. Shadow began pulling again, dragging Ayan toward a narrow trail behind the warehouse, one that led into the woods. The officer shouted, "Sir, wait! It's not safe!" But Shadow didn't stop, because somewhere ahead, Anaya was still alive, and Shadow could feel it. As they entered the woods, Shadow suddenly froze, then whimpered softly, staring at a flickering light deep between the trees. The woods swallowed sound. Sirens faded behind them as trees closed in, their branches tangled like warning signs. Ayan's heart pounded, every step heavier than the last. Shadow moved ahead with purpose, nose to the ground, tail stiff. The faint flickering light they had seen earlier blinked again, then vanished. "This is madness," Ayan muttered, but he didn't stop. The ground grew uneven, damp with fallen leaves. Shadow suddenly veered left, pulling Ayan off the narrow trail. There, half hidden behind bushes, stood a small hunting cabin. Old, forgotten, yet recently used. A weak light leaked through a crack in the window. Shadow let out a soft whine. He smelled her. Ayan crept closer, holding his breath. From inside came muffled voices, two men arguing in low tones. One complained about moving the child again, the other said they didn't have time. Then, Anaya's voice. Not crying, just scared, very scared. Shadow tensed, ready to burst inside, but Ayan grabbed his collar gently, whispering, "Not yet." He scanned the area and noticed something odd. Footprints leading away from the cabin, fresher than the rest. This wasn't their final stop. A twig snapped behind them. Ayan turned just in time to see a third man approaching. Before he could shout, Shadow attacked, fast, silent, controlled. The man fell, hitting his head against a rock. He didn't get back up. Panic exploded inside the cabin. A door slammed. Someone ran. Ayan kicked the cabin door open. Inside, Anaya sat tied to a chair, eyes wide with disbelief. The moment she saw Shadow, she screamed his name. Shadow rushed to her, licking her face, tail wagging wildly. Ayan untied her hands, lifting her into his arms. She was shaking, but alive. "We have to go," Ayan urgently said. But Shadow didn't move. Instead, he growled, deep and threatening, staring at the back wall. Ayan followed his gaze and noticed a hidden door, slightly open. Fresh voices echoed from behind it. More people. This was bigger than they thought. Ayan grabbed Anaya and ran out the back, following the footprints Shadow had noticed earlier. They ran downhill toward a narrow stream. The sound of shouting grew louder behind them. Just as Ayan's strength began to fail, headlights appeared ahead, police vehicles blocking the path. Officers rushed forward, weapons drawn. Anaya was safe. But Shadow? Ayan turned in horror as Shadow stood between them and the cabin, barking fiercely, refusing to move. One of the kidnappers charged out with a weapon raised. A gunshot echoed. Shadow disappeared into the darkness. Ayan screamed Shadow's name as silence fell. Then, from the shadows, came a familiar bark. For a moment, time stopped. Ayan couldn't breathe. Inaya clutched his neck, crying into his shoulder as police shouted commands behind him. His eyes were locked in the darkness where Shadow had vanished. The gunshot still echoed in his ears. Then, a bark. Sharp, strong, alive. Shadow emerged from between the trees, limping slightly but standing tall, his eyes fierce. Behind him, the kidnapper lay on the ground, tackled by officers rushing past. Ayan dropped to his knees as relief crashed over him. Shadow ran forward and pressed his head into Ayan's chest, whining softly. "You did it," Ayan whispered, his hands shaking as he held him. "You saved her." Paramedics checked Shadow. Just a graze, nothing fatal. Inaya refused to let go of him, wrapping her small arms around his neck. "He promised he'd find me," she said through tears. "I knew he would." By sunrise, the truth came out. The kidnappers were part of a local trafficking ring that had been targeting quiet neighborhoods. Inaya wasn't the first, but because of Shadow, she would be the last victim they ever took from that area. News spread quickly. The quiet street was no longer silent. Neighbors gathered, police cars lined the road, and cameras flashed. Ayan avoided them all. He sat on the porch with Shadow beside him and Inaya asleep between them, safe at last. Miriam approached slowly, tears streaming down her face. She knelt and hugged Shadow, whispering prayers of gratitude. "He's not just a dog. He's a guardian." Something changed that day. Ayan, who had lived his life in careful isolation, found himself surrounded by people. He started walking Inaya to school with Shadow every morning. The park felt safe again. Laughter returned. Weeks later, a small ceremony was held by the local police. Shadow received a medal for bravery. He didn't understand the applause, but he understood Inaya's hug. As the crowd dispersed, Shadow suddenly stood up, ears alert. Ayan noticed it too. Across the street, a stranger stood watching, too still, too focused. Shadow growled low. Ayan's chest tightened. Some threats don't end quietly. That night, Shadow scratched at the door, desperate to go outside, tracking a scent Ayan hoped they'd never smell again. The scratching grew louder, sharper, filled with urgency. Shadow wasn't restless, he was warning them. Ayan opened the door slowly, leash in hand. The night air was cold, heavy with something unfamiliar. Shadow pulled forward, nose low, following a scent trail that cut across the street and disappeared toward the unfinished housing site at the edge of the neighborhood. Ayan hesitated. The police had said it was over. The arrests were made. The danger had passed. Shadow disagreed. Leaving a note for Miriam, Ayan followed Shadow under the pale glow of streetlights. The construction site was fenced off, half-built structures standing like hollow skeletons. Shadow stopped near a pile of concrete blocks and barked once, short and sharp. A sound answered back. A footstep. A man emerged from the shadows, hands raised slowly. He wasn't armed. His face looked tired, desperate, not threatening, but not innocent either. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm here to disappear." Ayan kept his distance. Shadow stood between them, unmoving. The man confessed quickly. He had been the driver of the van. When things went wrong, he ran. He came back not to finish the job, but to retrieve something left behind. Evidence, something that could expose everyone else involved. Police lights suddenly flooded the site. Miriam had called them after reading Ayan's note. The man dropped to his knees. This time, no one escaped. As officers took the man away, Shadow finally relaxed. His job was done, again. Weeks later, life returned to normal, but better. Ayan officially adopted Shadow as more than a pet. He became family. Mariam and Anaya moved into the house next door permanently, no longer alone. One evening, Anaya tied a red ribbon around Shadow's neck. "So you never forget," she said, smiling. Ayan watched them from the porch, understanding something for the first time. Some bonds aren't chosen, they're destined. Shadow lay down between the two houses, eyes half closed, peaceful but alert. Always alert. Because even when the world feels safe, a guardian never sleeps.